Over the years, there's been some unbelievable Star Wars video games. There's been some games that have become nostalgia classics, and, well, there's been some downright weird games. A ways back, we did a video on some of the weirdest merchandise items in Star Wars history, so we figured it'd only be fitting to pick some of the weirdest Star Wars games that have hit shelves. Now, a weird game doesn't mean it's a bad game, although there's definitely some games on here that are certainly not good. Before we get to our list, though, be sure to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content. Now, let's dive into this thing. Number 10, Masters of Teras Casi. Who would have thought there'd be a Street Fighter / Mortal Kombat type of game for Star Wars? This game takes place during the back half of the original trilogy, and Emperor Palpatine has tasked this mysterious assassin, Arden Lin, to take out the rebel heroes. Lin fights in the style of Teras Casi, a strictly hand-to-hand combat style. The rebel heroes must face Lin and others in one-on-one Teras Casi style fights. Very interesting, to say the least. People don't come to play this game for the story, though, let's be honest. They play it with their friends on Friday nights over cheese pizza and their favorite beverage. Players can choose their fighter from the selection of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Han Solo, Leia, Chewie, Arden Lin, Boba Fett, and more, including a Gamorrean guard named Thok and a Tusken Raider named Hor. Yep, that's a thing. The whole premise is very weird and very different from other Star Wars games. But all in all, it's actually a really fun game, especially when you turn it into a tournament-style hangout with your friends. Fun fact, Kira, Emilia Clarke's character from Solo, is well trained in the art of Teras Casi. A fun connection by the writers. Number 9, Jar Jar's Journey. Now, here's a game that's close to my heart as I played it time and time again as a kid. It was sort of one of those digital kids book things that were popular in the late 90s, early 2000s. You would follow Jar Jar's journey in The Phantom Menace, and there would be goofy stuff to interact with along the way. There was even these really weird moments where the game would break out into song about some random thing.
Gorks are tasty, gorks are sweet, gorks are slimy, gorks are meat.
Naboo's a planet with oceans that span it.
Anyways, there would be these cool minigames along the way, like taking the bongo sub through a maze, solving shaped puzzles to fix the Nubian ship, and serving food to aliens. Now that was my favorite part. This was a cute little random kids game, but it makes the list solely because of those songs. They still haunt me to this day.
A droid once came to Jabba's place and knocked upon the door.
Number 8, Star Wars Demolition. Ever want a demolition derby type game with Star Wars vehicles? Then I've got the game for you. The backstory of the game is pod racing has been banned by the Galactic Empire, so Jabba the Hutt creates a new type of game that people can gamble on. Because, well, of course he does. The game sadly does not hold up very well, which is a shame because the idea behind it is very fun. You could play as some more well-known characters like Boba Fett, Lobot, or Darth Maul, or you could take your pick from some new characters like Witten the Jawa, Quagga the one-eyed mustached Wookiee, or Pugwist and his custom pod racer. Demolition was really the Star Wars version of Twisted Metal. It even had the separate endings for each character, just like in Twisted Metal. I think that's probably my favorite part of the game. I wouldn't be opposed to some sort of remaster one day of this, but that's very, very unlikely, I would say. Number 7, Jedi Arena. All right, let's go back in time a bit here to 1983. It sort of appears like Pong with lightsabers, and the idea isn't too far off for the gameplay. One player would play as the red saber, and the other would play as the blue. In the middle was a training remote, like we see in the original Star Wars, and players would have to deflect the blaster fire / electricity / whatever you call it towards the other player's side. If you showed this to someone with just this screen, I doubt they would even think it's Star Wars. Now, I know it was 1983, but you had plenty of other Star Wars games that at least looked like Star Wars. You figured you'd be able to have at least a lightsaber duel, not whatever the heck this is. But yeah, that's the whole game right there. Number 6, Bombad Racing. There seems to be a trend of a lot of games surrounding the Phantom Menace on this list, and I'm starting to think that that really is the weirdest time in Star Wars history. Remember what we ranked as the number 1 weirdest merch item? If Star Wars Demolition was the Twisted Metal of Star Wars, then Bombad Racing is the Mario Kart. This game let you race as several characters from the Phantom Menace, each in their own type of vehicle, and you'd race in cool locations from the film. I'll be honest, I think this game is an absolute blast, and the soundtrack is awesome. There were so many one-off things in the late 90s, early 2000s for Star Wars, and this game is just another one of those. A random Mario Kart clone with Star Wars tracks and skins. I do miss the days when companies and developers would just make silly games for the sake of it. Imagine a Star Wars racing game like this now. Whew. Number 5, Star Wars Grievous Getaway. Now let's get into some mobile games here. And I'm not talking about mobile games on the smartphone. Remember when flip phones had games on them? That is, if you remember flip phones. These relics of the past did in fact have games on them, and well, they were what they were for the time. In this game, you'd play as Obi-Wan during Revenge of the Sith, chasing General Grievous on Utapau. Obi-Wan would be on Boga the Varactyl, and Grievous would be on his wheel speeder bike thing. If you did get through the 5 levels of this game, you'd unlock the ability to play as Grievous. Did anyone actually play this one? Number 4, Star Wars Cantina. So this game was actually made by the same company that made Grievous Getaway, THQ Wireless. Only this time we are talking about smartphones and tablets, thank God. Star Wars Cantina was essentially played up before played up. You'd play as a canteen owner and serve the people of Tatooine whatever they order. Each patron would have certain likes and dislikes, and your goal was to make as much money as possible before day's end. In between levels, you could upgrade your cantina and whatnot too. I think the best part of the game is the fact that the cantina is named the Thirsty Bantha Cantina. Amazing. However, the game only lasted about a year before being removed from app stores. Number 3, Tiny Death Star. Released originally in Australia and New Zealand, this mobile game involved expanding the Death Star to invite people to come in and start businesses. Almost like a mall tycoon game or something like that. Players would add floors onto the Death Star, choosing either residential or commercial areas to build. You know what? This game's starting to give me Fallout Shelter vibes as well. Tiny Death Star was a new version of Tiny Tower, which was also created by the developers at Nimblebit. I don't know, I think Palpatine had his whole plan wrong. He should have been stacking businesses inside that Death Star to create a real empire. But hey, to each their own. Number 2, Yoda Stories. This game has sort of reached that pantheon of not good Star Wars games, and deservedly so. Another late 90s game, this time on Game Boy as well as the PC. You play as Luke Skywalker, and there really was no central plot or even a goal at that. Developers made the game so that the player would have something quick to kill time, with roughly an hour to complete the game. And then when it was completed and you restarted, you had a whole new random task to play again. Objectives ranged from finding a random object to simply rescuing another Star Wars character. Gameplay would go from puzzles to fighting some enemies, and that was it. But why is the game called Yoda Stories? Well, Yoda is the one who will give Luke his missions in the game. And yeah, that's it. Before we get to number 1 on this list, I have a few honorable mentions with Star Wars Monopoly, Star Wars Chess, and Connect Star Wars. Who doesn't love that Han Solo song? Number 1, Gungan Frontier. All right, here we are again with Phantom Menace content taking the top spot. Are we really even surprised? Gungan Frontier is a very unique simulation-style game for Star Wars. Published under Lucas Learning, players would have to help Gungans develop a new settlement on a moon over Naboo due to Outer Gunga becoming overcrowded. That's right. Boss Nass gives you the full rundown after an opening crawl.
Which user will help us? Thank you, Sir Jedi.
After his spiel, he then gives you Jar Jar, R2, and a half-sentient mollusk to help you on your mission. Yes, I said mollusk. Once you load your ship and go to the moon, you get to choose your spot for the settlement, and then you start building your ecosystem.
You should make it a grand ecosystem. We should Gungans lucky.
Gameplay involves sending out animals and planting seeds to build that ecosystem. From there, Gungans will use these resources to build bubble cities and just live their lives. The goal is just to keep the Gungan civilization going for as long as you can. In the main menu, you also have the option to create a critter, which you can then use in your game. Honestly, that's a very cool customization feature for the time. But there you have it.
We got a few little requests of you, sir. Increase the harvest.
Have you guys played any of these? And if not, would you guys play any of these? I think it's time I go boot up some Gungan Frontier again for old time's sake.
Uh-oh.
What do you guys think, though? Did I miss any games? Leave a comment below and be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the Holonet.